Join us March 23rd and 24th for the 2019 Meet the Masters of Income Property.
Let's break this down and look at some of the strengths of income property as an asset class.
I found that this event is really helpful because I'm totally a newbie to real estate investment, and so I picked up so much information.
One of the great things about it is that it's so fragmented, right? Embrace the fragmentation.
I've actually been learning a lot about tax benefits to real estate, and I've been investing actually well over 10 years now, and I learned a lot of new things today.
The other advantage of this weekend is networking. Meeting new property managers, meeting new area specialists, and seeing the product they have to offer. That changes year by year.
Register now at jasonhartman.com/masters.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
It's my pleasure to welcome a returning guest back to the show. He's been on several times before, and I've been following his work for a good 20 years or so. I originally had the pleasure of meeting George Gilder on a cruise, a Forbes investor cruise through Scandinavia and Russia many years ago, and I saw him speak there and got to hang out with him, and it's a pleasure to have him back on the show. He's co-founder and senior fellow at the Discovery Institute. He's original pillar of supply-side economics, former speechwriter for President Ronald Reagan, author of the classic book on economics, Wealth and Poverty, the New York Times best-selling author of The Scandal of Money, Why Wall Street Recovers But the Economy Never Does, and author of the new book, Life After Google, The Fall of Big Data and the Rise of the Blockchain Economy, as well as many other books. George, welcome back. How are you?
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. It's good to have you. So Google, and now you may disagree with me on this and feel free to, but I believe that Google and Facebook are two of the scariest companies on earth. They influence way too much. They have way too much control. Any company that controls 65-70% of the global internet traffic, either number one, needs to be busted up under antitrust, or number two, needs to be regulated like a utility, or number three, needs to make their algorithms open source so we can see what they're up to. I don't know. What is Google Marxism, George?
Google Marxism repeats the original error of Karl Marx. Karl Marx's basic mistake was to imagine that the machines of the Industrial Revolution were kind of the final human accomplishment, that from then on, after the factories and turbines and steam engines and beginnings of electricity, railroads of the Industrial Revolution, the only challenge would be to redistribute wealth, that the problem of creating wealth had been solved. Mm-hmm. And today, Google makes the same claim, even more grandiosely. They say that their technologies, their artificial intelligence, their machine learning, their robotics, their biotech, their search engines and solution engines, maps, and all the miraculous inventions that Google has provided the world are the final human accomplishment. Because we're headed for a singularity where Google's machines are going to be smarter than any humans, and humans won't even be able to comprehend them. And all we can do is retire to various beaches and receive a guaranteed annual income while the new masters of the universe fly off to nearby planets with Elon Musk in a winner-take-all universe. And I just think this is a delusional philosophy. It's Google Marxism, and it is a typical error that technologists always make of exaggerating the significance of their own creations. Artificial intelligence is a wonderful technology. Well, it creates jobs. It makes human beings more productive and thus more employable. It's a good thing, but it doesn't usurp human minds. Artificial intelligence is impossible without real human intelligence.
Yeah, very, very interesting. What do you think about, you believe that Google is sort of at the peak of its power right now, it sounds like. I mean, are they going to be actually toppled? It's hard to imagine that any company as powerful as Google and you know, say Facebook too. I don't know if you include that in your thinking here, but I'd be curious about that one. Yeah.
10 years ago in 2008, the 4 leading companies in the world in market cap were Walmart, Exxon, China Petroleum, and China Industrial and Commercial Bank. 10 years later, the 4 biggest companies in the world are Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. This is a tremendous triumph for American information technology. It's completely unpredicted. I'm just saying that in 10 years, these companies are going to be displaced by new companies that supply a new architecture for the Internet based on the cryptographic innovations that are occurring around the world in the wake of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Neo and EOS and all these new foundations for Internet security and Internet transactions without the ridiculous circus of usernames and passwords for every website on the planet, all assuming that they're the apple of your eye. They're the only website you have. So, of course, you know your username and password and the stupid security questions they ask and all the other personal data they require for you to transact on their page.
Well, look, you know, most people think of Google as a search engine. Obviously, Alphabet, maybe we should be talking about Alphabet, the parent company. It's many things. They're into all sorts of stuff, robotics, AI, search, zillion other things, self-driving cars, etc. But, I mean, most people experience Google as a search engine. That's what they really think of, and maybe that's
what they do. 95% of their revenues still come from their search engine.
Right.
Advertising sold on the basis of information collected through their search engine. That's 95% of their revenues. Since most of their products are free, they don't submit to the usual disciplines of a capitalist economy. So their learning process may be slower than an ordinary company experiences that has prices to convey to them the real conditions in their marketplace. Google has virtually no ordinary customers.
Right.
It avoids security liabilities to their customers by giving away their search for free.
Right. What you said before, the fact that Google doesn't really have that, and many other companies are in the same position, they don't have that typical feedback mechanism that most businesses have to have because they're not so overfunded and over wealthy, right? You know, Google is kind of immune to the typical business environment. Many other companies are in the same place.
It's not that they're overfunded. It's that they had an absolutely brilliant coup in advertising. They understood the lesson of life after television, which was my book written in around 1990 with subsequent editions, which predicted the computer of the future would be as portable as your watch, as personal as your wallet. It would recognize speech. It would navigate streets. It would collect your news and your mail. Just might not do windows.
Right.
It'll do doors.
Right.
And Steve Jobs read the book and passed it out to his colleagues. So I think I had some minor role in the rise of these smartphones that I called teleputers back in the day.
Teleputers, I love it, yeah. Very reminiscent of the tricorder on Star Trek. What is the future of search then, for example?
Well, Google is already abandoning search. Google is moving from search to solutions. They're focusing on employing artificial intelligence, sort of transhuman artificial intelligence, and the collection of virtually all the data in the universe to be able to answer all questions themselves. So their ultimate goal is to use big data and concentrated data centers and in the clouds to, in a godlike fashion, deliver answers to all your questions, better than the answers you could summon yourself.
Yeah, something else.
And better than the answers than any other web page. Now they crawl the web to offer your answers, but in the future, their artificial intelligence will allow them to generate answers themselves.
Mm-hmm. Tell us how that looks. I mean, how will the internet, you're a futurist, a technologist, you're all kinds of things, really, a financial guy. How will the world look in 10 years, 5 years? You know, what will our experience be like versus the way it is today with blockchain influencing technology so much?
The blockchain reverses this whole Google empire. The Google model is a kind of porous pyramid where in search of security, they concentrate all the data in a bunch of giant data centers deployed near rivers and glaciers and in the mountains around the world. And the idea that centralization will offer security. And this is a kind of poor, but centralization, they discover, is not safe. It tells the hackers where the information is and what information is important. So the blockchain reverses this model. Rather than concentrating all the information in one place, they distribute it across all the nodes of the network. And they make each individual participant the master of his own data, his own identity, his own content. And so rather than having to learn thousands of usernames and passwords in order to transact across the internet, you have one username and one private key that applies to yourself. As your DNA is unique, your identity is unique, and that one identity can be used at any of the resources or sites across the net. Mm-hmm. And so it moves the internet from a porous pyramid where all the money and power rises to the top, to Google and Amazon and whatever, to a bottom-up internet where individuals control their own content and identity and security.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another part of that is something that we've probably all heard talked about a little bit, and it's this idea all of our information should be owned by each individual. We should own our own information rather than Facebook owning some of it, Google owning some of it, LinkedIn owning some of it. And then when we move around through cyberspace, our information would just go with us, and we would allow sharing and unsharing, and we could revoke permission at any time. What do you think of that idea? Will it work? And what does it really look like in practice?
Sure, it'll work.
Yeah.
It makes sense. The current system is broken down. There's no security on the internet. The big companies like Google's only answer is to dispatch SWAT teams against the hackers across the net, or ask for more usernames and passwords, or harass you with more security messages that are just irritating and distracting and cannot readily be differentiated from actual hacks. So the current security model is broken, and the only response of Facebook and Google at all is to ask for yet more passwords and maybe more PINs and ultimately iris scans and face recognition schemes and ultimately your DNA. So they just don't have an answer. The security is broken down, and what the cryptocosm offers, that is this new efflorescence of creativity in the wake of Bitcoin and Ethereum, is a new architecture for the internet, where the individual is in control, where the data is distributed the way human minds are distributed. The only thing that gives any meaning to any of these technologies is the individual human mind. That's what it's all about. And the idea that somehow the technology is going to blast out of control of human beings is just delusional.
Mm-hmm. George, how far away are we from this kind of change? This sounds pretty major. It sounds like a tectonic shift.
Well, it's a tectonic shift. It'll also be a new monetary system for the world economy at the very moment when the existing global monetary system is cruising toward a crash of some kind with $250 trillion of global debt, 4 or 5 times all global GDP. I mean, it's just an unsustainable system created to endow the central banks with the ability to impose the burdens of today on tomorrow, and in behalf of existing incumbent politicians. The biggest industry in the entire world economy, bigger than anything else, is currency trading. It's $5.1 trillion a day. It's 73 times all world trade in goods and services. It's 25 times all world GDP. And it doesn't even produce reliable or authentic monetary values. All it does is allow central banks to stick the bills of today on our children. It's happening now. I mean, it's an ongoing process. You know, the biggest problem of the U.S. economy, from my point of view, is the collapse of initial public offerings. They've dropped 90% in the last 20 years. The stock market is only half as large in number of public companies as it was before. Most of these public companies are buying up their rivals rather than accommodating IPOs, or buying up their own stock at a rate of some $40 billion a month. It's really a carnival of bunkum out there. It's called a stock market boom, but it's in fact a real crippling of the public markets and reduction to a few hundred favored companies that hedge funds buy in and out of at a rate of millions of times a second.
That would be a sign of more centralization and more winner-take-all type of situation, right?
It's the rise of the administrative state that really accounts for this collapse of entrepreneurship. There's no entrepreneurial collapse in communist China, surprisingly enough. I've just come back from communist China, where they've just published Life After Google, and 12 different publishers bid on it. The entrepreneurials, they have 3 times as many IPOs as we do in China now. They got comparable levels of venture capital and whole efflorescence of innovation. It's really impressive. And we in the United States are trying to catch up, essentially. But we still have virtually no IPOs. And the SEC is contemplating extending to ICOs the same kind of paralysis that reduced IPOs by 90%.
Well, the ICOs...
Bad policy.
Yeah. There's some bad stuff going on in the ICO world, I think. But I don't know. You might disagree with me. But, I mean, has crowdfunding filled the void on some of that?
Of course there's bad stuff. Yeah. There's bad stuff going on around the world. Bad stuff is a reflection of human behavior everywhere. But the $20 billion of ICOs over the last 12 months on the Ethereum platform, contrived in the last 5 years by a Vitalik Buterin, a teenage genius, really, lured out of college by Peter Thiel's fellowship. Mm-hmm. That $20 billion to thousands and thousands of new cryptographic startups has saved the entrepreneurial economy in the United States and across the world. It's been a great achievement. And yes, a lot of them have gone bust. Some of them are spectacular scams, rather readily exposed. But it's the future of the Internet, and it's really unstoppable, I believe, now.
What you were just talking about reminded me of something. I want to ask you more about one of your thoughts here about insider trading. You have an unusual angle, an unusual belief on that. You talked about it on one of my shows before when I interviewed you. Tell us your thoughts on insider trading, if you would.
The only trading that's significant, that's valuable investment, is insider investment. The government's position, which is paralyzing and stultifying public markets, is that it's illegal to invest in anything you know about.
Mm-hmm.
The government actually wants you to invest in
things you don't know about. Yeah.
State lotteries.
Right. Yeah.
And however, all the returns still go to the insider traders. I mean, there's a bifurcated returns in the U.S. investment scene. On one end are venture capitalists who never invest in anything unless they have intimate knowledge of every nook and cranny of the company. That's venture capitalists on one side who capture most of the return for entrepreneurship. And then on the other end are big conglomerates from Warren Buffett to General Electric to whatever it is, to Google and Facebook, which are buying up companies by the hundreds. None of these companies ever make an investment without intimate knowledge of all the inside details. And it's only the public in the middle that is relegated to these banal public statements by companies filtered through PR firms and law firms, where all the information is essentially filtered out.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's an interesting view. I think you have something there. Now, interestingly, I believe it's, I was reading an article once years ago about how insider trading is actually legal in either maybe New Zealand or Australia. Do you know about this?
I don't actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have the most oppressive insider trading environment because all the investors are terrified by Preet Bharara and prosecutors like him. He's the leader who run their computers through all trading data, and if there are any anomalous returns, they're marked as suspicious and investigated. Essentially, this has just intimidated the whole investment community, and they're all driven to computer trading. At least Preet hasn't indicted a computer as yet. This is the way trading happens, and you get these egregious 40% per year returns for hedge funds that are trading through Flash Boys and quantitative trading and all these empty models that succeed only by trading faster than the market can move. So they essentially get to front run without actually front running. The computer does thousands of trades a second long before
you can't compete before someone can click a mouse.
Move.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's impossible to compete. Wrap it up with any of your thoughts about the future, your new book, whatever you like, and give out your website too.
Well, just Life After Google offers a very hopeful perspective on this amazing upsurge of creativity around the world. And it's already addressed our problem of IPO doldrums. It's addressing the problem of world money, and with efforts to simulate gold in new digital forms that can allow a rise of a new global money that serves as a measuring stick rather than as a magic wand for central bankers. It addresses the security crisis on the internet, where the only answer is more usernames and passwords and security questions.
Yes, that stuff bugs you as much as it does me. See, George, I think usernames, passwords, and leaf blowers are some of the most annoying things in the world. Yeah. You like the leaf blower thing. See, that's a technology that needs to go away. It was one of the worst inventions ever.
The real leaf blowers are those computers doing currency trading in all the banks around the world.
Yeah.
$5.1 trillion of leaf blowing that doesn't even provide a measuring stick of a stable currency at the end of the day, or even at the end of the second. That's what the cryptocosm offers. I wrote about the microcosm, which was the rise of the computer chip back in the early 1980s.
And you wrote about the telecosm and the blogosphere.
The rise of the internet and fiber optics. And this is the new economy emerging today, the cryptocosm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
Life after Google.
Uh-huh. Well,
there will be life after Google. Google says there won't be life after Google, that we'll all retire to beaches. I say that humans still have a role in the future.
Well, that's
creative in the image of their creator.
Right, that's encouraging. George Gilder, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the interview.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.